allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, looks like we have all of our commissioners counted for today. So on to oath of office. Thank you for Robert and I.
Yes, Commissioners Fawcett Kaiser, please stand. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Robert Iverson,
Do hereby swear and affirm
do hereby swear and affirm
that I will support the Constitution and laws
that I will support the Constitution and laws
of the United States and the great state of Oregon.
of the United States and the great state of Oregon.
As a Port Commissioner,
As the Port Commissioner,
I promise to faithfully perform my duties
I promise to faithfully perform my duties
and uphold the mission and objectives of the port
and uphold the mission and objectives of the port
to the best of my ability and understanding.
to the best of my ability and understanding.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Okay, up next is the election of officers for the coming fiscal year, I should say. And I believe we have a policy that somewhat outlines that. There been any decisions, or been discussion on that?
Yeah, light discussion, certainly. It was to Chip correctly, correct?
Yes,
And are you declined,
yes, I am declining to take the role as president this year, and I think you would be a very good president.
thank you, and I accept.
Okay, so Commissioner Sorbo is going to be chair. Do we have the rest of the officers lined up, or do we make some choices on that?
I would be willing to stay as vice president.
Great. With that,
I would be willing to stay as vice president.
I'm fine with second.
okay,
I'll be second.
I like to be the secretary.
that sounds like I will be the treasurer then. Back to reviewing statements.
An important job.
I believe we need a motion to that effect.
Move to adopt the panel as described.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Congratulations, Nick.
Yeah, I'll make sure not to break it. Okay,
We'll be fine handled.
guess moving forward, I will start off your additions to the agenda.
The addition is a subtraction. Under new business item C, not quite ready yet, so that will be probably put off till next meeting.
Excellent. Okay, we will make sure to scratch item C on new business. Comments from the public? Anybody online? Hands up. No comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll keep rolling. Old,
Consent agenda.
what's that?
Consent agenda.
Oh, consent agenda. Approval of June 11 minutes.
I would move approval of the June 11th minutes.
Second.
All right, excellent. And I skipped ahead there on accident there, but we already did the comments from the public. Old business.
I think we have to vote.
We have to
on
vote
that.
on.
Hold on, not consent agenda.
Oh, Jesus, excuse me.
Motion made second, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, old business. All right,
And we have unfortunately lost the services of that TV this morning. It
Oh,
worked yesterday, so, well, for this purpose, the TV still works, but it doesn't.
we're gonna make it.
Yep.
Work only this TV.
Morning, Commissioners. I'm going to provide you with a detailed airport update. Excuse me, I've been sick. We are going to review I'm going to give you updates on the airport document review, FAA grants, communication, and a small bit about American Jet Center. In late 2024, Ms. Bynum and myself began the process of reviewing and updating the airport minimum standards, airport use template or through the fence template, and the T-hanger license agreement. Following multiple reviews by Aaron Faggry, Century West, Mr. Salisbury, we took the documents to the advisory committee for their input. I sent the documents to the advisory committee on February 4th for their review, and a meeting set up for February 18th. Unfortunately, at that point, the majority of the members were unable to attend the extra meeting, at which point I moved the document review to the next pre-scheduled Airport Advisory Committee meeting on March 31st. During that meeting, the committee provided feedback, but decided we needed more time. We rescheduled a follow-up meeting on April 25th. We followed up with the strategy to facilitate order and respect for everybody's time. We asked members to submit questions and comments beforehand. This worked well, and staff was able to walk through each comment or question provided by the committee. They provided valuable input. We were able to make legal justifications and explain reasonings for each question or concern. And because of the productive conversation, we were able to make significant progress. After further internal discussions, staff recommends that the airport use permit remains a template. It will be a starting point when the airport receives any airport use permit inquiries. The airport use permit template will be negotiated similar to a lease agreement, therefore not needing approval by the template not needing approval by the commission until final agreement is in place, and we would present it to you as we would present a lease. As a reminder, we have only 2 airport use permits over the last 20 years, and their fee was negotiated back during that time. I don't have all the details on that slide. The next steps is to take the minimum standards to the committee meeting on July 28th, where we will ask for the recommendation to present to the commission. And our goal is to provide the commission with a staff report and resolution at our August meeting for approval. That is our hope, and that's what we're shooting for. Slide. Fee schedule. On the screen is the current fee schedule at the airport, schedule at Scappoose Airport for the through the fence access. This was sent by resolution in June of 2006. It's a good general starting point. There's nothing problematic about the fee schedule. I would like to point out that the Scappoose Airport has one of the highest airport use fee schedules in the state. The state-run airports need to have legislative approval to increase their fees, and this has not been a significant priority for Oregon Department of Aviation. So their fees are pretty low, lower than ours. Please keep in mind that until recently, the Scappoose Airport did not charge fuel flowage rates. We also do not charge landing fees, which is typical for most small GAs. But it is one way to generate some revenue and reduce the cost of running there. Not reduce the cost, but at the March advisory committee, I provided an option based on their comments. We scrapped that option right off the table. So I do want to point out that I did give them an option, and it was not this one. It was something else, and that did not like that, and that's fine. Next slide. In this slide, you will see the fees adjusted at a 58% cumulative inflation. Those same fees today are what you see on the screen. So that's the adjusted rate. If we were to change it just based on CPR. The permit fee from 2006, which is $200 today, it's that. But if we adjusted it, it would be $315 per month per permit. And then each aircraft would be $26.75, depending on the class and the weight. So I just wanted to show that to you guys. It's worth reviewing. It's worth looking at the numbers, and something to think about is, should we keep the schedule as it is from 2006, which is this $17 all the way up to $130, or should we increase it? I will be bringing this to the Airport Advisory Committee on the 28th to discuss. We'll see what happens. Next slide. And moving into the FAA grants. The port recently submitted two 25-26 grants, 2025-2026 grants to the FAA. The first grant is for the final phase of the runway rehabilitation project, construction funds for pavement maintenance. I've talked about this many times. It's crack seal and slurry for the northern 4,300 feet, reconstruction of the southern 800 feet, upgrading the runway edge lights, replacing the Merle and Pappy lights. And the runway has hit its 20-year useful life and needs this pavement maintenance work. The grant for the rehabilitation, I flipped those on my script, is for $4,043,703. The grant application, the second grant application is for the East Side pavement maintenance design. This project will fix the pavement on the East Side taxiway, and the cost for the design of this is $98,000. CPI, CIP, Capital Improvement Plan. The port submits this annually to allow the FAA to accurately plan funding. Currently, our plan is to complete the runway rehabilitation this summer or next summer of 26 and begin the east side pavement maintenance of summer of 27, giving the port a break in 2028, followed by taxiway alpha reconfiguration to align with the FAA taxiway connector standards, which have changed in 29-30. So that will begin design in 29 and construction in 30. This will finalize the 20-year pavement maintenance project until 2040.
All
Yay. Next slide. Runway rehabilitation closure update. So as requested, I have continued to gather information regarding the cost of mitigating the closure timeline for the runway rehabilitation. As a reminder, I have had conversations with the following people. So the airport manager, Kevin Jones and Homer, Mr. Rob Oates from Caldwell, Idaho, Toby Epler from JUB Engineers. He is the engineer from Caldwell, Idaho, who successfully had a runway rehabilitation and they were able to use their taxiway. I would like to remind you, I think I brought this up. They were able to use their taxiway as a temporary runway because their taxiway was their original runway. So it was built as a runway to begin with. And then I spoke with Western United Civil Group, Josiah, who is the project lead on our runway rehabilitation, and they are the contractors that were selected by invitation to bid. So those are the people I've spoken to so far. I'm not done. Slide. Okay, all additional costs incurred will be at the sponsor's expense. So I would like to put that out there. So option one, these are just options. They're not just for us. These are just options. Close the airport. Option two, displace runway threshold, create a temporary threshold. We would shift the runway starting point for landings and takeoffs away from the construction zone, the north 4,200 feet. It's a way to keep the runway open while making sure both pilots and construction crews stay safe. However, because of the electrical work, this isn't quite doable. The electrical work is anticipated to take the entire 60-day closure, meaning while the reconstruction of the south end and the crack fill is happening, the subcontractors will be working on the runway throughout, making it unsafe to land and take off. Option three, grass or alternative runway. This grass strip would need to be built to FAA standards and approved by them. If we were to use a taxiway as a runway, it would need to meet the safety standards. In the construction safety plan, lights would need to be installed, striping would need to be removed and then repainted. It's also important to note that not all current users would be able to use the alternative runway. Not everybody can land on a grass strip and not everybody can land on a taxiway.
What percentage of people couldn't use those options?
Our smaller T hanger, single engine, not our larger new tenant. Option 4, NOTAM runway closed. I am confident to say that that is what happened in 2005, 2006. I still am doing research. The boxes are pretty messy upstairs, but I'm getting through the grant box of what we did. So NOTAM runway closed, so the airport road will remain open and the runway will be NOTAM closed with safety barricades and the lighted X's that we purchased and so on. Option 5 is extended work hours. So this is what I talked to Mr. Josiah Thomas about. I asked him as the contractor on the job, what that would cost us as a sponsor to extend work hours, doing maybe potentially 2 shifts. The high level dollar amount and the idea of the extended work hours would cost, there are 3 factors. So all subcontractors would need to commit to this type of schedule. So the electricians would need to have the staffing to do it. Same with the paving company and the crack fill company, and everybody would need to agree to it and have the staff to do it. The additional cost right now, not including Century West's fees to redo the safety plan, and submit this to the FAA for approval, is looking at about $650,000 to do extended work hours if we got everybody on board. That's another element of it.
And none of that is covered by the grant?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Absolutely. And then the safety plan must be approved by the FAA. We must show the FAA a solid, well-documented safety plan to continue partial operations, and the FAA will not risk a small mistake, from a pilot through the work to keep businesses open. And I understand we're in business with the FAA. We take money. We're taking $4 million from them, and we've taken millions of other dollars. So we have to we're somewhat at the mercy of them because we're taking their money. If we weren't, we'd have a different set of circumstances. But the liability, of a small accident and something happening, it happens. It happened last year 4 times. I don't want to pretend like it doesn't happen. But please know, I'm trying very hard to figure out a solution for this. I'm still working on it. I'm still talking to people. Amy and I are both still talking. And it's something that I think about a lot. And I've said that many times. So that's where we're at with the conversations. Nikki, looks like you have a question.
I do. The grass runway, I haven't been out there a while. Depending on, these smaller single engine planes, they're pretty forgiving as far as landing on certain structure, as long as it's not crazy bumpy. But some of the bigger commercial, that's not going to be a thing. So I'm just curious. And I don't have the numbers here, but obviously our new tenant, obviously not going to be landing there, clearly. And I think Brian kind of alluded to it a little bit, but what is the percentage of smaller, I'm assuming a high percentage is our smaller single engine planes that's going to be using this runway coming in for people or?
Yeah, any of our, any option we do is really, except for the displaced threshold, which is really off the table because of the electrical, would be most suitable for our smaller. So for most of our users, the significant portion of our users would be completely fine on the taxiway. But the jets are not, the impact the jets are going to have on that taxiway. And then grass is completely off the table for those.
How much work are you expected, to prep a grass? I don't, is it going to need a lot of dirt work to get this done, or is it?
I believe so. I haven't looked into it because I just feel like if we're gonna be spending that type of money, it needs to be for all of our users. Like, I don't wanna spend $500,000 and it's only for
Yeah, I get it.
85%. It's a tricky situation.
Yeah.
We're also not in a position to just spend $500,000.
No, 100%.
I mean, and that's where we're really getting,
I don't-
unfortunately, I mean, even the option of the extended work hours, that's a significant hit on our budget. I mean, that was just a high level off the top of my head, off the top of Josiah's, Mr. Thomas's head of, well, this is what I can see from other work we've done. They're working up at Kelso right now. We're talking about 2 shifts a day. I'm thinking, electrical, all of it, 2 shifts, another 100 to 150 per sub, not including a Century West, because they will have to create a scope of work for this, recreate the safety plan. But I just want you guys to know that I haven't forgot about this issue.
So first off, thank you for checking all the options. I just want to be clear on.
I don't know if they're all the options.
Well, checking into all of that. Am I hearing that the taxiway is maybe the lowest cost alternative that would potentially suit a good portion of our tenants? Am I misunderstanding that?
Potentially, we would need to really go over that with Century West. And again, I haven't started that process yet because I haven't had a clear direction of this is what we need to, we're going to move forward with this plan, taxiway as an alternative. I can tell you that this, between the taxiway, and I'm thinking of taxiway Alpha, which is the east side, between that, the grass area and the side of the runway where we will have people working on the electrical, digging up the conduit, digging under the connector ways. I'm not sure if there's enough safety space. There has to be a specific distance between where the planes were landing and where the human beings will be working.
So I got a question on the electrical work. You're not going to believe this, but I actually listened to the advisory committee meeting last night, which was very interesting. Have we looked at boring some of that work, or is it is it like not a long run of electrical where it has to be dug up? A new conduit be bore in instead of being dug up? I'm just curious.
So, because we are trying to reuse as much conduit as possible.
Yeah.
I mean, that in itself kind of answers your question, right? So as they're digging up throughout the entirety of the perimeter of the airport, they will be reusing as much of the conduit as they can to save money. So no, they can't kind of dig in and do it that way. While that would be great, no.
So there's that big a difference in money for the conduit?
I believe
It's that important.
Yes.
that
we save as much as we can.
Directional boring is also significantally more expensive,
Yeah.
but it's an uninvasive
Right.
technique to install
Right.
conduit.
Yeah, so then they're going to be digging up under the connector ways and, which will impede access, in some places. So no, unfortunately, but I mean, it's worth asking.
Yeah.
So I assume American Jet is aware,
Oh, yes, they're aware.
and how do they feel?
They don't love it.
Of course, but they knew this going in. That's the important thing. They knew that this was coming.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if they knew it was coming.
Yes, they do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and have they discussed what they are going to be doing in the meantime?
I haven't had that conversation with Josh. That's who is their COO there. I haven't had this conversation specifically with him. He's certainly busy right now with other things, but they are very much pushing to have this mitigated or shortened as much as anybody else who does business there.
Sure.
So they are definitely on team. Let's shorten this, make this doable for us, because this will impact them as well. So we are working on it.
So, taxiway looks, if possible, best option here, obviously.
It is an option, but it's not the best option for American Jet.
Yeah.
They're very well likely that there isn't an option for American Jet.
It's correct.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and maybe they need to change the way they use their fleet.
Sure.
And maybe for a while, for that 60 days, they're using something smaller and lighter if they have it.
Right.
So that.
About other airports.
Well, this is one of the reasons, thank you for that question. This is one of the reasons that like, for example, Homer, Alaska was able to get this funded because the nearest airport is 300 miles away. They're a critical hub. We are not a critical hub. I mean, we're not.
Right.
We're a small GA, and the majority of our users are pilots in training and, coming in for services, but we're not critical. There's Hillsborough 5 minutes away. There's Pearson. There's lots of there's Kelso. So quick, short trips. So according to the FAA, we are not critical to remain open. Just as Pearson redid their electrical this last winter, and they were closed for 75 days, I believe. And they only closed their runway during the day. They were open until dusk, but in the winter, that's because they had no lights. And they were open on the weekends as well, but they only were doing lighting. So they had, and that was the discussion that I had with Century West was, well, what if we split this up? And he said, well, the cost will rise because we'll have to mobilize more than one time, which is expensive in itself. And then we'll also have Century West on site twice. And then he's like, it will be closed for 60 days at one point for electrical, and then again, probably 45 days for pavement and during the summer. So this
Make any sense? Yeah.
So we're talking about two significant closures, and they thought, let's just put it all together. And again, I wasn't around when this project started, so the thought process I can't speak to, but I can speak to I do know that Pearson just did electrical in the winter. And they had their closure for 60 days, 60 to 75.
And have you talked to like Columbia? Have they given thought to how they're going to operate in these 60 days?
Columbia.
Aviation, the school?
Oh, Intercept. Columbia Aviation isn't a school anymore. They just rent out spaces within their hangar.
Oh, they're not a school anymore.
No, not that I'm aware of. They may have like one-on-one lessons, but they're not a school, like Intercept.
Okay,
Is.
so how is Intercept considering?
I'm not sure yet. I'm really trying to kind of get a focused plan before I start throwing things out to all of the tenants.
So one of my thoughts is, how could we facilitate planes using another airport for 60 days?
I mean, just like Pearson airport manager called me and let me know, once we have a plan in place, I will be able to reach out to the different airport managers at the smaller airports and say, we're going to be closed, or this is what it's going to look like. You might see some increased traffic because they're choosing to go other places. So that will be a communication plan that I get to come up with once we have a plan. And right now we don't have a solid plan because we're still really doing research on what our options are. I think there's some more phone calls that I'm planning on making and getting some more ideas. Then we'll have an open house at the airport is my goal, and have a, conversation, but we need to have a plan in place before we start.
Right. And although it's a year away, that is going to go by really fast.
Yes, it is. Yes.
And especially if we're talking about using other facilities. yeah, I would think we need to be doing this sooner rather than later.
Yes.
Obviously.
So as far as the taxiway option goes, what all needs to be done to kind of understand the safety plan and whether that's possible?
I'm gonna need us to meet with Century West and see what their ideas are and how we can possibly make that work, if we can make that work, if it will be approved, because we don't want to pay for them to do a bunch of work and send a new safety plan to the FAA and the FAA say, absolutely not, that's still not good enough. So there's still some conversations. We need to make sure that we're on the right track with that.
So can you find that out?
Yeah.
Or there's a plan?
Yeah, oh yeah, this is still part of the ongoing conversations and meetings that I've been having and discussions that I've been having. It's a day-to-day conversation or week to week, I mean, more about that.
Seems pretty clear to me that out of the 5 options, the taxiway is kind of maybe the one that might work.
It's the one piece of spaghetti that might stick to the wall there. I mean, it is. So we'll see. Again, I can come back in August and have some more information specifically about that. I can make sure that I find that out in the next month, and get back to you on that option. Yeah, the displaced threshold, if we weren't doing electrical, that might be the best, but because of the electrical work, it's really off the table.
Is this going to go back to the advisory committee, these options, or?
Talk to them about this. In our last meeting in June, I went through these with the group, so they are aware of this information so far.
Couple questions, Lacey. Some of them they covered, but trying to understand, there's a lot of information here.
Yes.
Earlier you talked about on the revenue plans, I believe it was, there was one that you put out to the committee that was rejected out of hand.
Yes.
Is that right? What was that?
So what I did was I took any plane under 40,000 pounds, which is where our run impact, that's when we start seeing significant impacts and faster deterioration on the runway is at 40,000 pounds and up. So what I did was take any plane under 40,000 pounds and I put it into one fee at $350 per month, flat fee, not including, and that was it. And then anything over 40,000 pounds would be negotiated within the airport use template. Mr. Eveland, who's on the committee, was just simply like, absolutely, that is too high, no. And I think that was the general feeling he had a really strong opinion about it, the strongest. So I'm gonna name,
Rate, not the.
it was a rate. I believe it was mostly the dollar amount. In fact, I think the dollar amount is
Always.
yeah. And he did not particularly. So I, was like, okay, that's fair. So what's another option? And again, when I talked about the 2006 versus to the adjusted rate, it was just an idea, keep it the same. I mean, it's been that way since 2006. We haven't had significant amount of through the fence. I mean, that could change. Let's hope it changes. But it is something to think about. Should we increase those fees or should we just leave them the way that they are? I mean, we only brought them to the table because it was part of the airport use permit and the reviewing the documents. So that was one of the documents within. So that's why it came to the table. So, I mean.
I have a question on fees because it came up earlier in the presentation, but something about landing fees, which from my, I should say my limited understanding, we have a lot of folks landing, maybe doing touch and goes, and we are getting no revenue from them and they're using the runway a lot.
Yes.
So is there any way to actually recover something from those?
Not really. So I looked into this a little bit more. It's hard to count that, right? So typically, if you have a towered airport, you can note it. I mean, I'm sure it's in their system. Every time a plane lands or does a flyby or whatever it is, it's noted. And it can be.
We can't put up a camera, tail number.
For cars.
Oh, we can't put one of, no.
Make them have a little.
We don't want to put anything that would trip up a wheel of a plane.
Could be,
I mean, fraud is a foreign objects are an issue. Yeah, yeah. Mm-mm.
I think the landing fees are more tailored to commercial traffic. When you're, heavy loads, Portland Airport, I don't think, I mean, if you're somewhere out here, like you said, it's a train. Constantly takes on. But it's expensive.
Well, yeah, and I looked it up and Coos Bay, Astoria, for anything over 10,000 pounds, Portland, for commercial, 10,000 pounds and up, Klamath,
10,000 pounds is a big airplane. Airplanes are meant to be light.
yes, yes. And then Hillsborough, a light and medium jets. So, I mean, us being a small GA and not doing landing fees is not uncommon. We're not the only one by any means. And again, how do we track it? Yeah, we could put a camera, but then we're talking about someone reviewing the camera, trying to make sure that we have the tail number. And that's an additional amount of staff time. I mean, it could end up being a wash in terms of having a staff person watch those cameras. And
One thing I would say on that, if it is a wash, to me, that seems like a win. Because we're then able to recover some of our revenue and not put it on the backs of all of our tenants.
yeah,
I just, my 2 cents as potential, like obviously a lot of things going on at the airport, there's impact to our businesses and. Not losing money. Start recovering more revenue, that seems like positive.
It also seems obvious that you now have a commercial facility that is going to be requiring a lot more usage than we have ever seen before. And how is that it's going to impact these touch and goes? How is that going to impact the current tenants that we have? So, we're no longer, it would seem we are becoming a much more professional, we need to become a much more professional airport. And how do we accommodate everyone? Probably can't. So how do we decide? I mean, that is the big question, and doesn't have to be decided today, but obviously this is what we need to be looking at for the future.
yeah, agreed. And I kind of talk about that as I go through a little bit more of my presentation.
There's
No, I mean, yeah. Yeah.
As well, that was the first.
Yes.
If I'm a tenant, what's the difference to me between option 1 and option 4?
Well, I mean, option 4 is close the airport. We don't want to do that. That's just it.
1 is close the airport, but option 4, would you tam it the whole time or just, so you're saying you would spot no tam it and it will be open sometimes or?
So when we close the runway, when we note them the runway closed, pilots are highly discouraged from landing unless there's an emergency. And an emergency would allow them to land on a taxiway. And this is pilot in charge. And they get to make those decisions for themselves. We don't police our pilots that are out there. So, and I'm not saying that a pilot couldn't land if the airport was closed, but that would be closed for business. That's not what we want to do, but it is an option. That's why I put it up there. But noting the runway closed means the X's will be out there and, there'll obviously be orange barricades and people working, but
Other activity at the airport.
activity will be, you could fly a helicopter, you could fly a gyrocopter, you could do flyovers, where you're not coming down and touching and then taking off again. You could fly over, which is part of pilot training, that you could do that.
That's the runway if it's closed.
Technically, you're not supposed to if the airport's closed. You shouldn't have helicopters there. You shouldn't have anything. So there is a difference between noting the runway closed, which we've done when we've had emergencies. There have been pilots that I have taken off on a taxiway many times, or landed in an emergency or left in an emergency situation, which is different than the airport being closed,
So what I'm hearing is people can just say it's an emergency and plan
Yeah.
to take off as they want.
So my last question before we get off is, remind me, I didn't pay enough attention at the time, but we got some emergency generators out there because we were deemed critical airport in the event of a Cascades production event. Is that some FAA justification to help get us?
The FAA didn't pay for any of that.
We do have that designation. Somebody granted it. Who was?
I'll have to look back at the 2021 or 20 report. I'll have to pull that up. I don't believe it's because we are not a critical hub, but these were just emergency backup generators to not pull from the grid in the case of an emergency. I will look at that, but I don't think
You think we can hang our hat on?
yeah, I will look at that and see. And I also wonder if bringing in American Jet will change what that looks like for us because of what they're going to be doing. And that will change. I'll look into that a little bit further, but let me write that down. Okay. Any more questions? Happy to.
That was a lot to cover.
Next slide. Okay, just a little bit more on communication. So when I started working at the airport, the number one complaint I received was the lack of presence and communication regarding the facility. I made it my mission to improve that perception. As a part of my efforts to improve communication and keep everyone better informed, I added a dedicated section to our port website with newsletters. So when you click into airport news, you'll jump into that supporting documents below. And I'm planning on doing quarterly newsletters and then bulletins for any upcoming activity that's going on. Next slide. So we have our newsletter on the left and we have a recent bulletin, and I also posted a bulletin yesterday. Krista helped me, and we have some activity going on this Saturday. So my goal is to typically been sending mass group emails. I don't know. This is just a great place everybody can just head to this airport news place on the website, spot on the website. So yeah, this will include project news, closures, any other important information regarding tenants and users. And then I've also moved out there part-time. And that goes to your question about professionalism and being on site, I think is really, especially as we have Intercept and now American Jet, being on site and keeping an eye. Not to take away from all of our tenants who have always been such great advocates and been out there and keeping things going. But I just think with those two new tenants coming in, new to the area, not just new to Scappoose, but new to Scappoose, city of Scappoose, Columbia County, the state of Oregon. I think it will be good to have a port presence on site, and I will be there a few days a week. Yes,
It's the tie-in on August 16th. Is that open to the public?
Yeah.
And commission, everybody?
Yeah.
What is it?
Northwest Antique Airplane Club they do it yearly. It is just a fly-in, and the gate will be open on the east side. You can come in, you can buy a pie from them, and all the money that they raise goes to their scholarship program. So they have this every year annually. I will send out more information about it as it gets closer, because they haven't finalized all the details yet, but except for the date. So, and they'll probably have a flyer too. And then for new business at the airport, I just want to give you a little brief update on American Jet. They're planning to be operational and selling fuel by the end of next week. Regarding the FBO, construction on tenant improvements should be well underway by next week as well. They're on site this week to meet contractors, sign vendors, and take delivery of some equipment. And they're tentatively looking at the end of August for a Young Eagles youth event, aviation event. So they gave me that little update to share with you guys. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. A lot to go over there. It's busy out there. Okay. Marina update.
Good morning, Commissioners. Yeah, I figured I would just take this continued from last meeting. And I will let you know that right now we are in the process of filling the communications and grant manager position. 3 interviews yesterday for tomorrow, and some of that will hinge. The person that comes on board will see exactly what's falling into place by the time they get on board. As we know, there's a few things that are potentially coming to fruition in August. So by the time we get somebody on board, I'll find out, determine the bandwidth and capabilities of them to either take this on as a staff person, or if we need to get some part-time help on it or something. So just know that that's kind of in the thought process there. What I was hoping to do was possibly a second meeting in August. We do the public meeting and stand up the strategic committee. Miriam's been making some calls, finding out folks that if their interest level. I think we've got about 11 people identified. Get together at that meeting, stand that committee up, and then working on a strategy. Use the framework that we received from BST. There's some good stuff in there as far as it's almost a Gantt chart. It's almost there ready for us. There's a game plan there. We could tweak it though. We'll look at what they provided, talk with that committee that we stand up. There'll be a couple people from the advisory committee on there as well, former commissioner, hopefully, if he accepts. And I feel like right now that's about what we were able to do with it, just with where we're at staffing wise. We've had some challenges when people miss work here recently. So this feels like the most prudent way to do it. I don't want to necessarily get started and then hand it off to potential new person when we can wait a month and hopefully have them on board by then. So if you're okay with that, that's kind of, I won't say I'm slow rolling that, but I'm kind of being a little more strategic about it as far as knowing our capabilities currently in-house. Have any questions on that? Would you like to possibly do it in July instead? That would be the 23rd. That's the week I'm going to try to be off. I just feel like that might be a little premature because we definitely won't have the person hired in-house by then.
I think it's probably best if you're thinking we're gonna have somebody hired in-house. What's the feeling from everyone else?
August sounds good to me. I think that.
When are you expecting to make the decision?
End of next week.
End of next week.
Yeah, that'll give us a chance to try to figure out how we want to line up a meeting out there as well and make that available if we can. Zoom, if we have the logistics. That would be most likely an evening unless you guys changed it. So it would be the second meeting, August
27th.
27th. Yeah.
How about this night?
Yeah. Any other thoughts since the last meeting on the Marina stuff?
A bunch. Yeah, it's a lot.
Lots of bleeding.
It's like
Yeah.
the airport, fast.
Yeah,
It'll be,
I think it's cut and dry. I mean, I welcome your efforts, but
yeah, it'll,
I'll be amazed if we don't go where we already think we're going. So.
Yeah, I think this process will allow us to get some buy-in. It does seem pretty cut and dry, but.
The decision is
Case for
cut and
business.
dry, but the implementation
Yeah.
is not.
I agree with Nancy. I think that, like Robert said, the decision is kind of pretty what it is, and the rest of it, we just need to our best moving forward and see how we're gonna execute it with, and give people time and everything, so.
How it impacts folks.
Exactly.
It's going to be painful.
A lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Is that everything for the Marina update?
Yep.
Okay,
If we do an August 2nd meeting, maybe we could do it at one of our locations, maybe the airport.
Oh, I was hoping at the Marina, but
Marie?
Marina would be even better, yeah.
Yeah.
And discuss the Marina, that'd be awesome. Is there a spot there that meets all
we may be able to figure something out. Yeah, let's kind of parenthesize that and you're right, let's maybe someplace else, but we can get it there, maybe potentially use some of the soil and water space. It's just hard to know how many people are going to come and how much space we'll actually need. So we'll work on the logistics for that.
Yeah, to the sites, well, it's a nice out.
Yeah, if it's nice, we can
Evenings.
set about an outdoor meeting.
Um, okay, that's everything for the Marina update. You're still on the hot seat, it looks like, Sean?
Yes.
The Lignetics.
I spoke with Steve Nelson this week, and he said currently there's really nothing to report. They're still monitoring some of the activity, but the big thing is we have this the July 29th meeting with the community over here at the community center. We've agreed to the city and Lignetics and the port. So if anyone's available to attend that, I will definitely be there and would welcome the company and welcome the feedback from the committee. It feels like Steve feels like they're making strides in the right direction, and with the anticipated additional improvements that are for their next fiscal year, should be even better. So.
The meeting be here or at the
Community Center on July 29th. Yeah. That's it.
Everything, okay. New business?
Yeah, Mr. Jones.
Unmute.
Hey, Kevin.
Good morning. I hope
Morning.
everybody's doing well there. I've been listening to the reports, and I'm prepared to give you a report on Global's activity at Port Westward. It's been a while since we've done this, so I'll get you all caught up. The terminal's currently employing 21 employees to operate the terminal. Renewable diesel transloading has been going on now for 4.5 years at the facility. So we've accumulated a significant number of rail car activity and vessel activity. During that period of time, over the 4.5 years, we've handled 17,563 rail cars, which is equivalent to 149 unit trains. And the product has been loaded on 85 vessels at the dock. All this activity has been handled without incident by Global during that 4.5 year period. Safety obviously is a significant and most important issue for us at the terminal. And our safety results at the facility are as good as I've ever seen at a marine facility such as this. In the 14 years of operation, we've had 0 contractor injuries and 0 employee injuries. So obviously there's no lost time or no recordable incidents during that period of time. That's a pretty good record, and it amounts to 2,828 days, consecutive days with no recordable injuries and lost time. At the facility, all of our environmental tasks, activities, updates, and regulatory compliance reporting is up to date and complete. Obviously, our operations there are highly regulated, and a number of regulators, both state and federal, inspect the facility. And during that 14.5 years, we've had a significant number of inspections, 298 total inspections at the site during that period of time. If you look at it by regulatory agency, it's been 148 FRA inspections and ODOT inspections, 44 EPA, DEQ, and Washington Department of Ecology inspections, and 59 U.S. Coast Guard inspections. All these have been passed without any significant corrective activities required by the terminal. Let's see. In our operations at the site, we're required to do inspections by the FRA on the unit trains and the rail cars that we receive to make sure that they're properly placarded and marked. There's been increased activity in this regard by the FRA, and we've been able to meet 100% compliance with rail car inspections, both inbound and outbound at the terminal. In regards to the dock, we've been working with the port, and reviewing, upgrades necessary at the facility to meet the earthquake resiliency and seismic standards that have been, set by the state of Oregon for sites such as ours. In that process, Global has also been reviewing, material handling assets such as the tanks, the pipeline, and the assets that we use at the facility to deliver the product, from rail cars to, the tanks and from the tanks to the vessels. So that work continues, and, we're on track to meet all the standards that are required by the DEQ. And just a quick update on, expansion projects and things that, I specifically work on, for Global. We're expecting ethanol to return to the facility, in the beginning of 2026. The contract that we currently have, for renewable diesel expires on December 1st of this year, and it has not been renewed. So the ethanol, will replace the current activity at the facility. There's about a 2.5 month to 3 month period of time where, we're going to be transitioning the terminal from renewable diesel back to ethanol. So we're cleaning the tanks, inspecting the tanks, the floating roofs in the tanks, all the piping, and we're cleaning that to meet the standards required to, handle ethanol. We expect, ethanol volumes to increase, between now and 2030, as, there's a new, mandate requiring, Japanese, automobile fuel to be blended with a 10% ethanol ratio into that gasoline. And the United States and Brazil are the primary countries that, Japan is looking at to supply that material, as they don't, produce significant volumes of ethanol themselves. So, we have had, a number of trading companies and producers, at the terminal to look at our, current operations, and have discussed, expanding operations there to, handle those additional volumes, which we expect to, see that growth over the next 4 years. Let's see. And, on another, note, we have also been, meeting with customers to look at handling, solid bulk materials. So we're talking products like, bentonite clay, copper concentrate, and aggregates at the facility. We've had, a fairly strong interest in these commodities. We're looking at utilizing existing assets that we have, for instance, assets that are associated with the, ethanol plant, several storage buildings and such. And we're looking at, modifications that we'd need to do, at the dock in order to have the proper equipment available to, handle those commodities. So we're, have met with some customers, and we have an engineering proposal to give us, some design and cost information, regarding, the assets necessary to handle those products. So that's under development. That concludes my report, short and sweet. Available to answer any questions.
Questions, Kevin?
Yes, sir.
What will the rail car activity look like with ethanol versus current RD?
It will start out, somewhere in the neighborhood, probably about half of the existing, activity. But I expect that to, equal or be equal to the activity that we've experienced here over the last 5 years on an annual basis, within the first year of operation. So that, and then beyond that, depending on the contracts and the customers that, we're able to attract to the facility, I expect the volumes, related to this Japanese mandate to potentially cause the volumes of material that move through the facility to potentially double sometime getting close to 2030, in order to meet those standards. And I guess the reason I'm fairly confident in that is These products will be shipped from the Midwest from, facilities, ethanol facilities in the, agricultural central portions of the United States and shipped to the West Coast. And when you look at the other facilities that are available that could potentially handle this material, they don't exist today. And obviously the rail facilities and the, other assets that we have at the terminal would accommodate that growth. So that's, in a nutshell, what I expect to see happen.
Kevin, this is Commissioner Fawcett. With that expected growth and would you anticipate more jobs out at the site?
Yeah, I would expect those jobs to increase by probably about a third. So you could possibly see, 5 to, 8, positions created by that growth. We currently staff and operate are available to staff and operate the facility 24/7. But I think it's safe to assume that we'd have to increase our head count there.
Kevin, can you tell us if you're still keeping the permits for the new tanks current, and do you anticipate, are you out marketing to do RD and ethanol, or will it always be one commodity? Because you'll need the tank.
That's a good question. Yes, the permits that we have in hand for expansion at the facility, which would allow us to add up to 6 new tanks of 120,000 barrels each. Those permits are being maintained and are in hand. And I don't want to say we're shovel ready, but we can react pretty quick to any new inquiries or new business. Our focus is on renewable products. The facility today is permitted for crude diesel, ethanol, and renewable diesel. But our general focus within the company is on the renewable products.
And any of that bulk goods, would that involve storage in the ethanol facility, or is it just going to be transload?
It'd all go to storage.
Okay.
If I understood your question correctly, the material would come in by rail. We'd accumulate enough material to satisfy the ship requirements, and then load that material to ship. I guess it's worthy of note, the new ethanol business that we expect to start up in the first quarter of next year is all for export. So our customer that we'll be working with has indicated that the Asian market, Korea, Japan, some product into Indonesia, all the material that we'll be handling in the future will go foreign flag from the facility. And the renewable diesel that we've been handling for the last 5 years has gone on predominantly all U.S. flag ships, because the material is coming to us, going on a U.S. flag ship, and then being transported to California or to refineries and to markets on the West Coast.
Will that affect the MARSEC level? Or?
No, it should. MARSEC is determined by the Coast Guard based on threat analysis, and I wouldn't expect any changes in that regard.
The foreign flag won't mean much to us then, right?
We had it before.
Yeah, it's definitely.
Previous ethanol.
Question, Kevin, Commissioner Sorber, on the new product, I think we touched on it a little bit. How do you plan on loading out there at the facility with that?
We're talking about the ethanol, sir?
No, the
Bulk.
the what?
Oh, the dry bulk commodities.
The other product, yeah.
Well, we'd be looking at constructing a ship loader for dry bulk materials on the dock. And so the best way to explain what that might look like is if you go across the bridge and you look into Longview, immediately next to the bridge, you'll see a tower that is there at berth 2 there at Longview. And that piece of equipment is designed to handle these dry bulk materials. And the ship loader itself that would potentially be purchased and erected on the site would look like one of the, if you look at EGT, the big grain elevator there on the Longview side, they have 3 of these ship loaders there at their dock. And so it's a tower with a conveyor in it, dust control, and then it loads the material into the ship.
Yeah, I'm aware of the construction of EGT. I mean, obviously, this is a plan that's far in the future. Just construction alone of that would take some time, I'm assuming.
And permitting and construction is, there's some significant hurdles and a lot of cost, related to developing this. From I guess speaking for global, it's a line of business that we don't traditionally do anywhere else, in our network. But these commodities, move through the Columbia River and have moved through the Columbia River for quite some time. For instance, the bentonite clay business, it's been moving through either the Port of Portland or Port of Vancouver since about 1985. And the companies that ship that material are large Japanese trading companies that have ownership or offtake agreements with bentonite facilities here in the U.S. And that product is used, has a lot of different uses, but primarily it's used for automobile casting for making aluminum and parts for automobiles. And so it's in high demand. And, it's a fairly inert and clean product, except it can be dusty in the handling process and so.
Thank you, Kevin. I was just curious there. I'm aware of the facilities that they were at one point in time, the Alcoa dock there in Vancouver and some other spots there. I was just curious on what the time frame on that. It sounds like we're ways out on that. I was just curious.
Sure. Yeah, we're investigating it on behalf of the shippers, that are looking for a home. They were in Vancouver, Washington since 1995, and I was associated with that business in my previous employment. And they've been displaced for a new soda ash facility that's being constructed there.
Hey, Kevin, Sean Clark here. By comparison, the 2 tanks that you guys currently own, what are those capacities?
Approximately 80,000 barrels. So we're permitted for 120s in the new tank farm.
Thank you.
You bet.
Yes. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for Kevin? Okay.
Thank you, Kevin.
Well, thank you, Kevin. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for letting me address the commission today.
Bob, it's on to you.
All right, thank you.
Excuse me. Let's see here.
Good morning.
Welcome to your annual Code of Ethics program. Oregon government ethics law applies to all elected and appointed officials, employees and volunteers at all levels of state and in all 3 branches of government. So I would say almost everyone in this room applies to, in addition to our advisory boards, many nonprofit boards. So individual port commissioners have always done a great job of not only understanding the ethical rules, but operating with the highest standards of ethics. And I think that you have placed a priority on this by doing this annual program where we just kind of do a review of things sort of as a check-in code of ethics. Okay, this year's ethics program, we're going to cover 4 different areas. The first is this is an absolute prohibition on the use of your office for financial gain or avoiding financial detriment. The second is also an absolute prohibition on accepting gifts over $50 from a single source with an interest in the business of the port. And as you'll see, we've talked about before, there's many exceptions to the gift rules. I just cover a couple of them because it gets complicated. The third area is conflicts of interest, and that's your conflict card. You want to be aware of your red card situation, be aware of your yellow card situations. And it's really I try to boil it down into a simple question on conflicts of interest. Does the decision financially impact you, your relatives, your business? So that you can kind of think about it in that way. So we'll talk about that. You can see the conflict card up there on the screen. And then number 4, I'll cover some cases from the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. What I do for this presentation is I go over the whole procedure to look at and see what we can learn from what the Ethics Commission has done. And just as a review, the Ethics Commission is a 9-member body, and they're appointed by the governor, and they're responsible for impartially administering and enforcing state ethics laws. Okay, first thing, and probably the most important thing, is that if you remember anything from this presentation, it's this: that you are personally responsible for complying with the Code of Ethics. So just as Commissioner Kaiser does a great job announcing conflicts in our consent agenda for the meetings, this does fall on you. And the example I use here is the city of St. Helens. This might be as interesting as it gets in the world of ethics. But it's a good example, I think, to learn from on personal responsibility. They actually had a meeting in January of 2022 where they went into executive session to talk about the wastewater lagoon project in St. Helens. They went in under pending litigation or litigation likely to be filed. So what we call pending litigation. There was 2 lawyers in the room, so they could talk to their lawyers about the pending litigation. Sounds good, right? Wrong. The Ethics Commission found all the city councilors in violation and stated it was the personal responsibility of each member. So you might be asking yourself, what happened? One concept of several things. First of all, one counselor actually, when they announced the executive session, even with the lawyers there, got up to leave and question the legality of the executive session. The lawyers convinced the city councilor to stay. So they went through the executive session on pending litigation. Another city councilor was in the room, actually filed the ethics complaint after he came out of the executive session, saying that they weren't talking about pending litigation at all. Said it was basically a sales pitch by the vendors, which they had put in executive session. And he was right, actually, on that one. The vendors were trying to offer their expert services, and they were talking about a bunch of general stuff, and it didn't really relate to pending litigation. So the city of St. Helens fought this. One of the two lawyers who were in the room submitted a declaration to the Ethics Commission stating that it was convened to discuss the, quote, risks of litigation, but admitted no pending litigation or litigation likely to be filed. And the Ethics Commission said, not enough. They reviewed it and say, no, they didn't discuss litigation at all, even with the 2 lawyers in the room. So my question to you is, how should they have gone into executive session? If you want to talk to your lawyer and there's no litigation pending, can you do that?
Or like real property transactions, other topics that are allowed in executive.
That's what you're doing.
Talk to your lawyer?
Know what you're talking about.
What they should have done, and they pointed out in the opinion, is what we do when I send you the memo, confidential privilege memo, and list the topics, and you go in under that. That's a privileged memo. So that's how you go into executive session. And they've been very clear, the Attorney General's been very clear that governing bodies should have the right to discuss things with their lawyer in public. But you don't go in, you don't just call everything pending litigation. So you call it, what I call it, talk to your lawyer, basically. That's the way you do it. So the individual city councilors thought they were protected, but it was their personal responsibility. So even the city councilor who got up to leave and was told to stay by the lawyers was found in violation of this. So I wonder, as I play that out, maybe that city councilor should have been, as things played out in the executive session, said, I'm not staying for this, or raise their hand or something, who knows? So what can you learn from this? The first and most important thing in executive session like this is to pay attention, right? You're aware if we go in under pending litigation and you say like, this doesn't sound like there's any litigation here, to say something, right? Because it ultimately falls on you. And if I'm wrong about that, or if the real property transaction, whoever the staff person is, this is gonna fall on you. You're gonna end up in the ethics commission dealing with the case. So pay attention. And then the second big thing that I think about, as I've read a lot of these cases over the years for executive session, there's a real general theme or idea that of the general versus the specific. So that's why I try to boil it down to by topic, keep it specific to each topic. When you start getting off and talking about general policies or, plans for the future and that sort of thing, that's when you kind of getting into that general land and you're going to get in trouble for that. Okay, the goals of government ethics. First of all, public trust in government. And the statute actually says that. It says service as a public official is a public trust. And the second one is that appearances matter. People watch not only what we do, but how we do it. Okay, and then in your packet was the code of ethics. And what we do is we just acknowledge it. I don't even need it out loud. Maybe you can just nod your head that you acknowledge the code of ethics for this year. If you need another copy, we can get that for you. Is everybody good on that? All right. Okay, the first area we're going to talk about is financial gain. I think we're, as a staff, we're lucky because you all understand this well and do it well. We just kind of go over it as a refresher every year. Basically, it's using your office or attempting to use your office to obtain a financial gain or avoid a financial detriment. And this is all, everything I'm doing here is in that code of ethics acknowledgement. For yourself, any relative or any member of your household. So it's a little bit more expansive than just the relative, it's a member of your household. Or any business you, your relative or member of your household is associated with. So that's, I think you can think about it like, if you're voting on something and it's someone that you know closely, then that should be raising some red flags about this. But of course, it has to be connected to you holding this office. And so that's what we call the but-for test. So the financial gain or avoiding the financial detriment wouldn't be available but for you holding this office. Okay, moving on to the second topic, gifts, the $50 limit per calendar year. That's from any single source that could reasonably be known to have a legislative or administrative interest. So what is legislative or administrative interest? That's an economic interest distinct from that of the general public. So if the recipient, something different than everybody else is getting, the general public, and they have that interest in any matter that's subject to your decision or vote. Any questions? There's a lot of exceptions. It's not only the statute, but there's an administrative rule that talks about all the exceptions. And I like to show this slide that a lawyer put together to talk about all the food, beverage, travel, you know, there's so many exceptions. So the best practice is if you have a question, just give me a call and we'll talk about it. Importantly, it does not include gifts from relatives or members of your household. And it does not include reimbursement of expenses. Those are excluded from this. So don't worry about, Christmas or something like that. When you're representing the port, it does not include admission or food and beverage consumed by you, your relative, member of your household, if they're accompanying you to the reception, meal, or meeting. You don't have to worry about that. If you're there on behalf of the port, then you're okay. My legal advice on private meals is just pay your own way. Okay, we're over to conflict of interest. Does the decision financially impact you, your relatives, or your business? And I wanted to say on this, I think sometimes maybe the press or the social media, they get it a little bit wrong in that there's nothing wrong with having a conflict of interest. It's actually, and that's really true, especially in smaller communities, that conflicts of interest exist. But what's important is how you deal with the conflict of interest, right? That you publicly disclose it. And you commissioners are required to publicly disclose the nature of your conflict of interest before participating in any official action on the issue. The announcement needs to be made each time it comes up. So over and over and over again, got to make that announcement. Oh, here's a question for you. How do staff report potential conflicts of interest? Anybody thought about that?
Staff would be the same, you're a public official, whether you're elected or appointed.
Any thoughts? How you do it? Anyone? In writing, yeah.
I mean, how you
In
announce.
writing, that's right. They're required to do a written notice to their supervisor or manager, clearly describing the nature of the conflict. And this is interesting, it talks about that they have to request that the supervisor dispose of the matter, giving rise to the conflict. The supervisor is gonna respond to that and provide instructions to the employee how to proceed. And then we're required to keep an official record of that. Sounds quick.
Yeah.
And that has to all be in writing also, the response.
Okay, so what are these conflicts of interest? I sort of just boiled it down to the red card, yellow card scenario, but basically anything you see on the horizon that could have an impact, that's a potential conflict of interest, and you should disclose it. So if there's any possibility of a conflict, just disclose it, anything. You're always going to be better off by disclosing it. You're not going to end up in an ethics commission process. And then once you disclose that potential conflict, then you can participate in discussion and action about it. And then that's different than the red card situation with if it's an actual conflict. So the could impact turns to would impact. And you're reasonably certain that there is an actual conflict, so you must disclose. And then there's no discussion or action allowed on that topic. There's a slight exception to that. It's kind of what they might call a rule of necessity. Interestingly, if the vote is needed for a quorum, there's only 3 of you here, then you can actually disclose, not talk about it, but you can vote on the end. But we don't want to do that. So any questions about this framework? Okay, I often say caution is the best approach, and just disclose potential conflicts. If there's anything you have in mind, just publicly announce it, and then it's taken care of. Okay, Oregon Government Ethics Commission cases. This is kind of my summary of what I thought was a big difference this particular year was that in past years, We saw these letters of education over and over and over again, no matter what the, you know, what the nature of the offense was. They just got a letter of education that they had to sign. Well, that changed this last year in 2024, 25. We really saw a lot more fines coming out of the Ethics Commission. And even when a proposed fine by the staff went to the Ethics Commission, the 9-member Ethics Commission voted for higher fines in a lot of cases. So that was different. So over the whole year, these are my rough numbers, there were 74 cases dismissed. So what does that mean? Like a lot of these cases where they might start out and they agree to, well, either they don't even go anywhere at the beginning, or they make a decision to have the staff look further into it, like Mr. Preheim's media. That's where that is right now, is that they agreed to kind of push that towards a final decision, but now they're in the 6-month period. A lot of those cases get dismissed, most, as you can see. But they did issue 56 final orders during the course of the year. And again, there's that theme of more fines. Oh, and you know, by comparison, in the year previous, there was really only 2 cases in the whole thing that resulted in fines to people. So, and there was a lot more. I'm not going to cover all the cases, but I can tell you there was a lot more fines this year. And as a reminder, if we're in executive session and for things that you do on advice of legal counsel, then there's no fines. That's a complete defense. So if, for example, in that City of St. Helens example, they were not fined because the lawyers were in the room telling them to do that, right? Okay, Port of Morrow, we looked at this case last year. They actually hadn't imposed the penalty yet when we looked at it, because they settled for a $2,000 fine in 2024. And I think you all remember this one pretty well, but basically out at Morrow, there was a nonprofit set up to provide fiber optic cable to government. And then they also had a private side of it. And when Amazon came along, they wanted that fiber optic cable. So the nonprofit sold the private fiber optic cable business to some folks, all of whom were the ones on 2 port commissioners, a county commissioner, and the board director, basically. And so I think that the essence of that was that they didn't put it on the market, you know, for everyone. They just kind of sold it to themselves, basically, for 2.6 million. And from what I can tell, even though it's mostly disappeared, well, this is settled. The Oregon Department of Justice is still investigating this case, but it's difficult to find any answers about where that is, because it's been like a couple of years now. So what are they looking at? They're looking at that undervaluation because I think it was by 2017, that private fiber optic group had already had revenues of like over $10 million when they sold this thing for 2.6. So was there an undervaluation? And then the other issue was that the nonprofit actually loaned the private group some of the purchase price at a significantly lower interest rate of 2.75%. So that was all part of it too. I think maybe fortunately for them, they didn't keep very good minutes at their meetings, so it's really hard for the Department of Justice to sort the whole thing out, and that's ongoing. So this is settled. Anyway, getting to why I brought this up again, after our ethics program last year, everyone was like, $2,000, why was it so little? Can you go find out, Bob, what's going on? So I contacted the Ethics Commission and said, what's going on? Why is this such a low fine? And they sent me back a lot of information, but basically this is what they said. They received credit because at various times they did reach out to the Ethics Commission. So sometimes they did disclose the conflict and other times they didn't. And this went on for years, where times they did, times they didn't. But they actually got credit for that. And the Ethics Commission sent me a recent, he sent me the tables that they used, which was slightly interesting, I suppose. And you can see there were several pages of this. So the thing we didn't know last year was like, how do they come up with these fines? Do they just make this up? No, they have a whole framework where they award points and You can see at the bottom of the page, their advice sought and followed prior to violation. So they subtract, so they do have a framework for the way that they work out these fines. We know that now. Okay, I'm just gonna cover a couple of these. This was decided in March. This was a Lane County School Superintendent who actually agreed to a $4,000 penalty, which ends up being the 5th highest ethics penalty fine in history in the state of Oregon. He was a school superintendent who was giving contracts to his wife. There was like 22 payments over 3 years. And didn't advertise it, didn't do any of the fairness in public contracting that we're required to do. But I don't think that really tipped it as much as the other thing he did, which was he raised his own salary without his school board's approval. He was just over 3 years, he just kept giving him raises, which amounted to almost $60,000. And so he got a lot of hot trouble for that, ended up resigning down there. And agreed to a $4,000 penalty. The other really big one, which amounts to the 6th highest in history, was former Secretary of State of Oregon, Shemia Fagan, who was a rising star in politics. Many people thought she might be the governor someday. This was a pretty big scandal where she was in charge of Secretary of State's office, which audits cannabis businesses. And it ended up that she was getting paid $10,000 a month from one of the businesses that she was auditing.
Gee, is that
Seemed like a
wrong?
no-no.
So you can't do that. Got it.
Write this stuff down.
6th highest in history. So you might be wondering, what are the highest ones in history? Provided a handy chart for you.
Oh, goodness, Sylvia's right at the top.
Yeah, I actually might have.
That was the same case when it's.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sylvia, yeah.
Yeah, 1 and 3 were the same case. Sylvia Hayes was the fiance of Governor John Kitzhaber. And she was kind of in charge of his environmental policy, but it turned out that she was being paid by the environmental companies that she was supposed to be, dealing with. So that's not okay. She agreed to a settlement of $44,000. What I've read about that is that she actually was or is going to be able to discharge that in bankruptcy. So she won't even pay it. Also that she fought the I don't know. She fought they did a bunch of public records requests and she fought it on the ground saying that she wasn't a public official, which is not true at all. If you're doing the business of government, then it's a public record, right? She ended up losing that and getting hit with $120,000 in attorney fees from the public records case, which she will have to pay. So that's out there too. And then Kitzhaber, as part of that whole scandal, he not only resigned from office, but he settled for $20,000 for an ethics fine. Dan Bunn, you may remember, was the state director of public instruction, school instruction, or superintendent for the whole state back around 99, 2000. Had, I think it was over 1,400 ethics violation for using, state property, phone, car, all kinds of stuff. It was a big scandal back then. And they ended up settling it for a settlement where they said it wasn't even a fine of $25,000. And while that was ongoing, when he was running for reelection in 2002, he lost the reelection. So Kitzhaber, the ODOT thieves, as I like to call them, they had a private business of selling off ODOT property. There was 4 of them involved in this. Many of them went to prison, one as much as 12 years, because they ended up, I think they took like $6 million worth of Oregon Department of Transportation property and were selling it over a 16-year period. So there was 4 people that got dinged for that one. That was the highest fine that came out of it. And then, as we said, the school superintendent and former Secretary of State, Fagan. And then the last one, you may recall, last but not least, what I call Pappy Gate. They were, this is also a pretty big scandal as far as the press goes. It wasn't resolved until, one of them was April and the other one was just a couple weeks ago. But basically, the executives were fined 500 and the executive director got 1,500. Oh, I forgot to mention that both this executive director and Shmia Fagan, these were the ones where the staff presented a lower number and the board said, they need to pay more. They raised the fine for it. But what they were doing was, this Pappy Van Winkle, which is a really nice bourbon, they were able to set it aside and divert it to a liquor store in Milwaukee, Oregon, where they would go and then pick it up without having to participate in a lottery for these bottles. So obviously use of office for their own financial gain, pretty clear.
Must be good.
It is very good.
Okay, at the core of ethical public service is the responsible handling of conflicts of interest. Managing such situations with integrity, transparency, and fairness. It is not just a best practice, it is a fundamental duty to the public we serve. Question?
Yeah, I have one. Does count as our training? The requirement for what term?
Yeah,
State training is mind-numbingly boring. This is interesting.
thank you.
If not, we should apply and say this. If it doesn't count, it should.
Folks back there know better, but I think we do get the credit towards the insurance discount for this. That's my. I believe so. I'll double check.
See if we can make it meet our once per term requirement. Because I think it's like a 1 hour or 2 hour.
Is that the public meetings?
Yeah.
Law?
I believe so.
Yeah, we can check it.
At in-house, we could sure learn something actually.
And just so you know, I'll have staff that are not in attendance watch the video from where Bob starts this, so we can all make sure we get the same information.
Well, thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
That was a lot of good information there. Executive Director's Report.
I think it was fast. Thank you, commissioners. Kind of a whirlwind last month, I feel. Summertime fun.
I always joke it'd be nice to have a calm time in the summer, but it's never really the case, so. Things are happening here on the calendar. Just updated it a little bit from last weekend or Friday when I sent it out. Thursday. This Friday just called it, yeah. I put in green the community events coming up. If you'd like to sign up for any of those, we have a sign up sheet on the bulletin board down the hall. I know this Friday we got Port of Rainier Days. And I'll be there in the evening. Wait, okay, yeah, that's right. We're setting up in the afternoon. And then at the port booth at the fair, the port will be there, the booth will be there most of the day, and then we'll have some shifts. We'll kind of stuff there, so. Let's see, any questions on the calendar? We got, I left the work session on their TBD. I know we talked about not doing that, so if you guys are okay, I'll remove that unless we have something that pops up.
Enjoy your vacation.
Thank you. And then I think the big thing on the horizon is the community meeting with Lignetics in the community here, obviously on the 29th. Forward to that. And also attached to what I handed out is the department reports that were also included last Thursday. So if you have any questions on any of that or my calendar, please let me have it.
All right. Thank you, Sean. And we're on to commissioner reports. Brian, you want to start us off?
Sure, yeah. Been kind of digging into a little bit of the airport stuff to better understand what's going on with that. And I just wanted to, I listened to the recording of the March 31st Airport Advisory Committee meeting. And I'll just want to commend staff for working through that. That was some difficult, I will say there's useful feedback. The presentation of that feedback was a little difficult to take. So good job on staying patient and accepting that. And I think we're making a difference with some of those things. And hopefully the presentation of feedback gets a little better in the future. So it's a little easier to go through those meetings. that is all I had. I am excited to hear about Global potentially doing some new things out there, so see how that goes and when that happens, but mostly just looking at airport stuff.
Yeah, no, I have nothing new since our last meeting.
I don't think I have either. Robert? I went with Commissioner Fawcett and Sean and Bob to the PGE meeting. That was very useful. We met, remind me her name again,
Debbie Powell,
who is the new,
VP of Transmission and Utilities.
Operation, yeah, generation.
she didn't get near as good a title as the other guy. That was a very useful meeting. She was very inquisitive. She was very informed on Port Westwood, but also wanted to know what things from us. Biggest takeaway was they'd like to meet more often, which I think is important. Discussion of the tank farm. I'm sure that was public information that they plan to dismantle the tank farm next year. My concern is, they need to do what they need to do, but I'm afraid that tank farm may be on the tax rolls at a high level. And that dismantling it is likely going to result in another one of those years where all the taxing districts get hit for, I don't know that that's going to happen, but I could see that coming. And I mean, in my uneducated mind, I could see that being on there for tens of millions of dollars and a potential devaluation when they're gone. So
That's unfortunate, because I would think that getting rid of those tanks would actually increase the value of that land.
It would, I mean, that's a liability for PGE, those are.
and I have no knowledge that that's the case, but the way that I've seen it work, I would bet they're still valued high and going to be devalued. So that'll be interesting. We also talked about access. So I've been working with the port and the fire district to store up and use and refresh the Erickson Dike third access, emergency access to Port Westwood. Should there ever be an incident where a train was blocking one and the incident happened at the other, it'd be really rare, but also would not want that to be needed and not available. So that was a good meeting, I thought. That's all I got.
For myself, yeah, I am excited as well for Global potentially, that could be a really big deal for the port. If that, I know they're scratching the surface on that. I'm very curious on how that will look schematically on paper. That's a lot of stuff going on at one facility, and you normally don't see, fuel and something like that at the same facility. So I'd love to see the plans on that. Very exciting. Thank you guys, anybody involved, staff with the airport, kind of exploring every nook and cranny and avenue on a unfun thing to deal with. So, thank you. And that's all I have for my report.
I'd like to thank Commissioner Fawcett for his leadership this past year. Did a great job, and it's been a pleasure working with you. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you. And that's my report. Now we will be going into executive session.
Port of Columbia County will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 1926602F. Consider, for example, public records, including written legal advice from Port General Counsel, is privileged and exempt disclosure. Representatives of the news media and designated staff are allowed to attend. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the discussions or deliberations that occur during this or any executive session. Commission will return to open session after the executive session. Will announce any decisions that are the result of discussions held in the executive session. Any persons excluded from executive session are welcome to return to open session when it is resumed. Thank you.
Question. Can we kill the air conditioning?
That wasn't hanger, it's a hanger piece.
Okay, we're out of executive session. The port will be hosting a special meeting on 7/21, which is a Monday at 1 p.m. Meeting is adjourned.